that you're taking time out of your Sunday morning to show up with us here this morning. We are going to be talking about immune support health. My name is Beth Flemming, and I am one of the 4 regenerative detox specialists here that'll be presenting today. And we really wanted to talk about this immune support theme, just given that we're going into the winter season and it's a hot topic during the winter time. So I'm going to start by just talking simply, I'm going to break it down more to, a cellular level and talk about the different types of immune cells. So in an estimate, we have anywhere from 70 to 100 trillion cells in our body. And our cells make up everything in our body. They make up our connective tissue, our organs, our glands, our nervous system, our hair, our gut lining, our eyelashes. And cells can either be on the weak side or the strong side. And so really what immune health boils down to is cellular health. And I've had the opportunity of doing blood analysis in the past where you can actually look at your cells underneath a microscope and you can see your immune cells. And your immune cells, when they're strong, they look like these beautiful white angels just floating around and going from space to space and seeing if there's anything that they need to tidy up and clear up. And they're magnificent, and you can see their glowing light. And when they're on the weaker side, they're actually kind of crumpled in and their light is very dim and they're not able to move as freely within the body. So there is 2 different types of immune cells. One is our inherited immune cells, and those are passed down from your parents and your grandparents. And they either have a strong or weak constitution. And that's why you see some people will inherit maybe a weak thyroid or inherit adrenal weakness or lymphatic stagnation. And then on the other side of that story, you also hear those stories of the 90-year-old grandpa who smoked cigarettes and drank 2 pots of coffee every day and was, running strong. And really what that has to do with is the constitution of your inherited immune cells, whether you inherited these cells that are on the stronger side or the weaker side. But as a collective, we are seeing more of a weakening in our inherited immune cells, basically because of the environment and the amount of increased toxicities that we've been exposed to. And this is why we see in the past 30 years, a real increase in, they say 1 in 2 people have cancers now, and increased diabetes, increased allergies, and different things, because our constitution of our cells are weakening from generation to generation. And, that's something that we definitely have the power to turn around for sure. And then the second type of immune cell is an acquired immune cell. And these are learning cells. They are cells that are learning how to either basically take on strong habits or weak habits. And if they're not quite up to the learning curve, that's when these cells will just kind of die off and phase out. Now, we really need to create an environment in the body where these acquired or these learning immune cells can learn to be strong. And we hear this concept of nature versus nurture, but it's really both. So the cells actually learn from each other. Our cells are communicating with each other on what we call like a communication highway through the electricity of our bodies, through our nervous system. We are electrical beings, and our cells actually communicate with one another. So when the communication pathways are clear, the cells are able to learn from each other better. When the communication pathways start to get disrupted, that's when we start to see a weakening of the cells as well. So there's 2 basic functions of the cell. Number 1 is to consume energy, and number 2 is to eliminate waste and cellular byproducts. When you flood your body with hydration and oxygen, alkalinity, you're helping the body to neutralize acids. And what the acids do is they build up around the cells and in the cells, and they actually hinder the cells from absorbing optimally and eliminating properly. So when you have hydration, when you have oxygenation, when you're giving the cells breathability, it gives them more elasticity to be able to adapt to, bacteria or viruses that are coming in, so that they're able to maneuver and communicate with one another to have a stronger immune shield. So when your body is on the acidic side, it actually leads to a very congestive environment or inflamed environment, where there's tension and aggravation, where there's crowding of the cells, and where there's a sluggishness and a denseness, a stagnation in the cellular communication pathways. And this, like I said, can lead to a weakening of individual cells. So cells are surrounded by two fluids. We have our lymph fluid, which is 75% of the fluid in our body, and we have our blood, which is about 25% of the fluid in our body. And Carrie Drinkwine is going to go a lot more in depth into our lymph system. But basically, when our lymph system is in an acidic pH, it starts to deteriorate and congest the cells. And it creates a very dense environment around the cells, so nutrients aren't able to get into the cell, and then also the waste isn't able to eliminate out of the cell and move to the lymph system. And then this is where we come into risks of malabsorption and overintoxication. So each cell basically needs space to breathe. It needs space so that it can perform these two set tasks of consuming energy and eliminating waste. And the blood is what delivers the nutrients to the cell. And the blood is rather easy to clean because it has a pump. But the lymph system does not, and it can get stagnated rather easily. And it's like a pond that's super murky and has a lot of weird things floating in it, and nobody wants to jump in it, right? Our lymph system is our waste system, so it can get stagnated rather easily. And when that happens, the cells actually start to clump together and get on top of each other. And I like to think of it like a slinky. When you pull out a slinky and you see each ring on top of one another, this is what starts to happen, and the cells actually start to form kind of like a car jam. And when that happens, the nutrients aren't able to get inside that car jam, and the waste isn't able to get outside. It's just clumping on one another. So when you get a cold, that's actually why your body creates mucus, because your lymph system has gotten stagnated. And so it's creating some type of fluid mucus to try to get those cells to separate and get those weakened and congestive cells out of the body. And so the body is rather brilliant in that way. When the cells are living in this congested and sluggish environment, they are much more apt for weakness and much more apt to be a target to viruses and bacteria and pathogens, because they're just sluggish. Their communication is not as heightened as it could be. But on the other side of that, when cells are in an alkaline environment, when there's space between each cell and the cells are able to breathe, then they have the ability to bring in the nutrients and eliminate the waste. And I like to see it when I looked at my cells under the microscope. It's like they look like honeycombs, like golden light honeycombs, where the cells are all nicely stacked around each other. There's a little bit of space in between them, and that allows the immune cells to come in between and go where they need to go and communicate with our other cells. And what this does is, when your cells are separated like that and have space, it creates independent strength within the cells. And we need each cell to be independently strong so that as a collective, they're all communicating together. And that creates a resilient immune system and a resilient body. So you might ask, like, well, what are some of the ways to create this environment? What are some of the ways to optimally support the immune system in this way? And first and foremost is to eat your fruits, because your fruits are your most highly electrical vibrational foods. And so they feed that electromagnetic energy to the cells, and they create that alkaline environment within the cell and outside of the cell. So also eating foods that are high in vitamin C, as we know, zinc, vitamin D, eating foods with a lot of antioxidants that create that oxygenated environment. And basically just keep your fruit bowl full this season is my number one tip for winter immune health. When you do this, you're helping your body to eliminate wastes. And then also, you don't want to overload your cells with things like processed food and acidic foods and fatty foods. Because just like your fancy car, if you went out and bought a nice car, you would want to put the cleanest and purest fuel in it. You wouldn't just opt for the cheaper fuel that looks okay, because it'll lead to sluggishness within the car or sluggishness within the cells. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. and let you guys see a chart here. This is an acid and alkaline chart, and it's basically just referring to the foods that are more alkaline for your body, creating that breathable, oxygenated environment. Anything that's more on the acidic side is going to be in this 5 to 2 area, and more alkaline 7 to 10. And we want to range somewhere in that 6 to 7 space. We want our pH of our lymph system to be there. So the acidic foods are your processed foods, your meat, dairy, and eggs, your breads, your coffees, like your battery acid. And then over here on the alkaline side, you'll see a variety of fruits and vegetables that are recommended. Now, when you see an acidic fruit, it actually has the opposite effect in the body. So these acid fruits, like your lemons and your oranges and your grapefruits, are actually some of the most alkalizing foods for your body. So you can see here we have cherries and watermelon and romaine and celery, coconut as one of the more alkaline proteins. And then, you have your alkaline experiences as well, which Carrie TIdwel is going to get into. So we'll share this chart in our follow-up email, but this is a really good kind of go-to if you're trying to think of things that are supportive to eat for the immune system. So basically, to break it down, is the body can handle a lot, but at some point the cup gets full. And when that happens, that's when we see sickness arise, and that's when we see a weakening of the cells. And so that's why you may see, people often in their 40s or 50s, they'll say, oh, I've been so healthy up to this point, and then, I had an accident and my immune system was compromised, or I got a little cold, and all of a sudden it was a snowball effect of all these other diseases showing up in the body. And basically that's just showing us that our cup is full. So when our healthy cells stop communicating with our weak cells, this is when our weak cells become isolated and neglected and alone. And that's when different, cancers and tumors and diseases arrive, when pain arises, when the nervous system starts to break down. So really, when you're talking about your immune health, you're talking about individual cellular health. And the stronger the individual cells and their ability to perform these two tasks of absorbing and consuming energy and eliminating wastes, the more easily they'll be able to eliminate opportunistic proteins that come into the body and cause the body to have an immune response. So we actually have a transformation coming up. Carrie TIdwel is going to talk more about this, but the four of us, we collectively hold these transformations. And the one we have coming up in January is all themed around shining from the inside. So creating that internal shine, creating that environment where these angelic immune cells are able to shine vibrantly, communicate with each other, and creating that inner joy, inner wisdom, inner knowledge, inner shine from the inside out. So Carrie will talk more about that, but that's kind of what I have to say today. And Carrie TIdwel is going to jump a little bit more into the lymph system to break that down even more. So thank you so much. Oh, Carrie, I think you're muted.
You went me right now instead of Carrie TIdwel, right? Okay. Beautiful. Well, thanks so much for heading us off with such an educational opening, Mary Beth. And the lymphatic system is something I'm super deeply passionate about sharing. Lymphatic health is your immune health. And I think that a lot of times you'll hear people say like, oh, I have a strong immune system or I have a weak immune system. And it really is just plain as day the health of your lymphatic system. And so as Mary Beth explained, we have trillions of cells and two fluids. We have blood and we have lymph. The blood feeds, the lymph cleans. The blood is your kitchen, the lymph is your bathroom. It's the sewer system of the body. And so I actually just want to break down the basic functions of the lymphatic system. So the basic functions of the lymphatic system is the removal of excess fluids from your body and from your tissues. So we can have excess fluids through what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, what we put on our skin. And that is the way that waste and toxicity comes in. And Mary Beth touched on those more alkaline foods versus more acidic foods. But even like what you put on your skin can absorb within 30 seconds, 70% of what you put on your skin has entered the lymphatic system. So being really conscientious of your products and your soaps and this and that, that we don't often think of. So the main function is the removal of excess fluids from lymphatic system and tissue. And then understanding that the lymphatic system is actually a lipid-based system. And that means like a fat-based system. So the lymphatic system actually acts as a carrier and a buffer for fats, excretions of waste, cellular waste, bacteria. And it works in several ways, but it is the absorption of fatty acids and then the transport of those acids into the circulatory system and then into the kidney system and the liver system for elimination. So easily put, if you think of your body as trillions of cells and two fluids and the lymph is the bathroom, you always flush your toilet at home. And if you don't flush your toilet, you have an overspill. And if you have an environment where the bathroom is flooding so the lymph system is backed up, you have a swamp instead of a river or a swamp instead of a lake to swim in, you're going to be in this stagnant environment. And what that does is it draws down the cellular ATP of your cells. So as Mary Beth was explaining, all of our cells need energy, they need oxygen. All of our cells survive off of what's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a combination of glucose plus fructose becoming carbon. So glucose plus oxygen equals carbon, fructose plus oxygen equals carbon. So that is ATP, that's adenosine triphosphate. And I want to just make an example or make a point of the two separate systems. Oftentimes people think we need protein for energy. These are two very different things. We actually use amino acids for building. We don't use protein structures because those are complex structures that our body can't recognize as a primate. We actually use amino acids to build. So amino acids are what build tissue and cell, and carbon is what runs the engine, what fuels the cells. So they're two different things. They're not one thing. And so understanding that we need fructose, we need glucose to be the carbon for the fuel of our body, and we need amino acids to build structure, tissue, and cell. And so when we are getting lots of complex amino acids or complex proteins, or all of our proteins coming from animal flesh or dairy or eggs, these are very acid-based proteins, and our body doesn't know how to recognize them. And Rita will get into that with the gut health and the salivary health. We don't have the enzymes in our saliva. We don't have the enzymes in our gut. And what this causes is excess waste being dumped into the lymphatic system. So these excess proteins are excreted from the cells. So just like we eat and poop, our cells eat and poop. So they get rid of their waste into the lymph system, and we'll have excess proteins and waste floating around, which causes a coagulation of our cells and our limbs. So we have these sticky bound cells that aren't excreting waste, that don't have high oxygen. And when your body gets into a low cellular ATP, a low oxygen environment, this is the environment that invites in the fungal family. And sorry, I think I'm losing power here, hold on. So the fungal family starts to come in, and the reason why the fungal family comes in is it's there to clean up a mess. So the fungal kingdom and parasitic kingdom is actually, it comes in to eat up what doesn't belong anymore. So it comes in to eat up the dead cells, the bacteria, the broken tissues. But the problem with that is now we have invited fungus into our system. We've invited parasites into our system. And when we have a low energy environment, viruses, antigens, pathogens, and parasites can attach right to our cells. So especially with like flu season and all the things going on, COVID, and just any colds, any sort of virus, they can attach right to your system if you're in that low oxygenated environment. So we're seeing this play out through the immune compromised populations. And what that really means, what immune compromised really means, is stagnant lymph. Their lymphatic system is a swamp, and it's not moving, and there's not enough oxygen, and their kidneys aren't filtering. And so the lymph system's job is to excrete all of the digestive and cellular waste, bring it to the kidneys, and the kidney's job is to filter that out through the urine. Okay, there's a plane flying over. And so if your kidneys are not properly filtering waste out, and you can tell this by, we talked about this on some of our other talks, but testing your urine in a jar, take a urine sample after a 12-hour fast, no food, no water, and that will show you if your urine is clear, you are not filtering waste out. If your urine is cloudy, you are filtering waste out. You want like really cloudy urine, lots of sediment, is a really optimal filtering kidney. When this system stops filtering, that's when we get into the stagnancy. And so we actually have something called the lymph trunk, and the lymph trunk actually connects into both right and left kidney. And so each side of your body will actually filter differently. So you may deal with inflammation or arthritis on your left hand, but not your right, or, you know, pain on left hip, but not right. And that can be really directly associated to how that trunk of that kidney connected to that lymph system is working. And so you can open this up through elimination. And then I just want to cap up the rest of the functions of the, well, we won't go through the rest of them, but the main functions of the lymphatic system is so removal of excess fluids and waste, absorption of fatty acids, and to the circulatory system, and then the production of immune cells, such as lymphocytes, monocytes, antibody producing cells, which are called plasma cells. These are actually produced by your lymphatic system. So if your system is stagnated, you will not be producing as many immune cells or white blood cells. So if you have like a low WBC, a low white blood cell count, that's something that's showing that your lymphatic system is stagnated. And this is when we get into those precancerous states. Now, next thing I want to cover is the lymphatic organs. So the lymphatic system is the mucosa. It's actually almost 80% of our body's fluid, but it's the mucosa that lines all of our cells, our tissues, our organs. So it's a very intrinsic system. And one of my favorite teachers, after reading one of his books, he's long deceased, Wilhelm Reich, always said the issues are in our tissues. And that's exactly right. So the acid-based mucosa of the lymph system in between our tissues is what starts to eat at the tissues and cause joint pain and chronic pain. You know, if you have like chronic knee pain or chronic back pain, that means there's acids eating at those tissues, and it's because of the state of the lymphatic system. So the main organs are bone marrow, which a lot of people don't think of. So bone marrow is actually a sponge-like tissue that's found inside of our bones, and lymph runs through it constantly. So if we are having rheumatoid arthritis, which is generally considered a genetic thing, we can't get into that on this call, but that's actually parathyroid weakness and lymphatic weakness. But that's something that can be reversed if your acids aren't eating at the tissues through the bone marrow. The thymus, which is located behind your breastbone and your heart, is another huge lymphatic organ. Our lymph nodes, so all of you may have been sick at some time and felt your lymph nodes in your throat are really swollen, but they're actually like small bean-like shaped tissue that is found inside of the lymphatic vessels. And so basically we have lymphatic vessels, lymphatic capillaries, and lymph nodes. And the lymph nodes are constantly actually grabbing on to excess waste and dead cells. And that's what the lymph nodes are doing, and they're pulling those out of the system. So when our lymph nodes become hardened like rubber, they become stuck, that's when we get in trouble. And that's when we have symptoms like lymphedema, and further along become things like lymphoma. The spleen is a lymphatic organ. It like purifies not only blood, but also lymph. And the tonsils are one of your major lymphatic organs. So if you've had your tonsils removed as a child, this is a sign that your lymphatic health has been struggling since childhood. So the lymphatic, the tonsils, if you get tonsil stones, the tonsils are a huge organ, and they pull up waste out of the lymphatic system, and they're meant to be excreted, like either through those tonsil stones or a cough or whatever. And that your lymphatic health is in trouble. You do want to keep that organ if you can. And you can clean this up if you're like teetering on the edge of like, my daughter needs her tonsils out, or I might need my tonsils out. I highly suggest to work through some natural remedies first and then reassess. And then the mucous membranes are our last function. So moving on, into a little bit deeper, I'm going to wrap up here. But your cells basically feed the sewage into the lymph nodes. And I would like to think of like your lymph nodes as your septic tank. If you don't have a septic tank, you're going to be in trouble. Like there's nowhere to dump the waste. If those lymph nodes get hardened, that septic tank closes down. Now we have an internal backup of fluid. And then we only have two types of waste. So we have the two types of waste that we have is cellular waste and digestive waste. So the waste from our cells and then the waste from our food. And then I think that is most of the notes that I have. Let me just take a peek here. Yeah, and then basically understanding that the lymph is a lipid-based system. So fatty acids are absorbed into the lymph and then taken to the liver. And so this is one thing that a lot of people don't understand is the liver is like the project manager of your body. And so and I think Rita will touch on this more, but any injury to the gut allows all of the chemicals or substances to leak into the lymph. And then the lymph does its job. It grabs it all up and it starts bringing it to excrete to the liver. And the liver has to process those. It's like a chemical manufacturing plant, basically. So the liver has to process those chemicals, and then the kidneys need to excrete them through the urine. And so when we have an injured gut, which causes a stagnant lymphatic system, we also develop a symptom called fatty liver. And fatty liver, you can see if you've had like some scans done, you can see some fat deposits on the liver. But symptoms of a fatty liver will be inflammation, fatigue, severe levels would be jaundicing of the skin. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a result of fatty liver. Type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes is a result of fatty liver, and this insulin resistance. So this all ties into what Mary Beth was sharing about, when the lymph system is acidic, the cells are surrounded by water, fat, calcium, cholesterol, and they can't get nutrients in and they can't excrete waste out. So most people are literally suffocating on their own waste. And that is why the immune system is so compromised. So understanding how we have to have the systems of flow open, and we have to have the cells purging waste, and we have to have the eliminative organs removing that waste. And then we can do our best part by eating organic, alkaline foods that encourage this system to clean. And your fruits are your cleaners, and your veggies are your builders. So I really focus on fruits for lymphatic health. So I'll wrap up there. I think I'm right on time to segue into the next person's chat, and I hope that's helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, ladies. That's pure gold. Appreciate all of those insights. And I want to speak a little bit how in one generation we've seen this disruption of our innate immune function that Mary and Carrie have been touching on, which is resulting in this chronic disease epidemic that we're witnessing. So I have a great quote starting with Dr. Zach Bush, and it's, if we have a healthy inner and outer ecosystem, we wouldn't see chronic disease. So just as a question, what has impacted that innate immune system? Mary and Carrie have been touching on it, but there's various components, and a large one is glyphosate, which was introduced in the 1970s. Glyphosate's the active ingredient in Roundup. It's used in households, it's used in our agricultural systems, and between 85 and 95% of genetically modified crops worldwide are engineered to use this herbicide. So what glyphosate does to impact our innate immune function is it actually blocks the shikimate pathway, which is an enzyme pathway that's found in plants and single-celled organisms, and it's also found in our gut microbiome. And the shikimate pathway is so important because it's responsible for the synthesis of our amino acids. And as Carrie was touching on, these amino acids are the foundation of our building blocks. They're the foundation to building the proteins. So glyphosate actually blocks this pathway, and it blocks our synthesis of these amino acids. So what we're seeing now is this breakdown of our tissues. We're seeing a breakdown of the gut, which is leading to leaky gut. And then when we have leaky gut, all of a sudden particulates that we're not able to get into our bloodstream are getting into our bloodstream. And then those are able to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the nervous system. So when we have leaky gut, all of a sudden we see autoimmune conditions and inflammatory conditions. And then when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, we see neurological weaknesses and such. And there's 22 amino acids, which are converted into proteins. and 9 of these are essential. So we must get these from food. But if glyphosate is blocking this production, then we're just seeing an entire generation who is seeing this weakening throughout their tissues. Glyphosate not only blocks the synthesis of those amino acids, but it blocks the alkaloids of plants. And the alkaloids of plants are all of the medicinal properties. So that's basically the anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-diabetic, the properties that support your brain and your health function. Those are being blocked by glyphosate. So without these essential access to our amino acids, we're losing really important hormonal functions, neurotransmitter functions, bodily functions, and we're seeing this just rapid aging that's happening in our youth. So basically what happens with glyphosate introduction, which we experience through our water, we experience in the air, is it breaks down our tight junctions of our tissues. And the tight junctions are the Velcro that protect us from the outside world. So this is our body's innate immune function. This first line of defense and protection from the outside world is being compromised, which is why we're seeing so many of these chronic conditions. So I was doing some deeper research on this, and I came across the works of an endocrinologist, and he was seeing and finding that some of the top kind of contributors to this breakdown of this toxicity that we're finding is glyphosate, PFAs, which are found in makeup. So if you see fluoro in your mascara or your eyeliner, I would take it out. It's also in, nonstick pans and mercury and aluminum and, heavy metals. Those are some of the other top things. Also on his list was actually ultrasound and EMFs and vaccines. And what we've noticed is that, in the 1940s, only 6% of the population in the US had chronic disease. In 1886, 12.8% of the population had chronic disease, so it doubled. And then in 2006, 54% of the population is impacted by chronic disease. So this is directly related to an environmental insults, externally and internally. And it's based on our tight junctions, our inability to absorb these essential amino acids. So really wanted to speak to that. Even today, just in a glass of red wine, there's an average of 64 herbicides and pesticides that are found in that wine. And these herbicides and these pesticides and this glyphosate is really impacting our gut microbiome, which is so much of our immune function. It's 80% of our immune function. So really important in that lymphatic connection is that elimination pathway as well through our gut. So some of the solutions that we can work towards with this is actually creating those healthy soils, restoring our environments, getting some of these toxins out of our climate and out of our day-to-day life. There was a really amazing community up in Oahu, and they started incorporating regenerative farming with their youth. And just in a short amount of time, 100% of those native Hawaiians who were 18 years old and younger, 100% of them were experiencing pre-diabetic conditions. And after just incorporating one lunch from regenerative food sources and interacting with the soil and planting plants, 100% who were dealing with pre-diabetes, they didn't have it anymore. 100% didn't have those pre-diabetes symptoms anymore. So the body is incredibly resilient. It's just getting back to re-diversifying our ecosystems and our gut microbiome. And we can do this through working with our food, through working with changing those systems. and really supporting that biodiversity. And there's 10 to the 31 viruses that exist in our air, in our soil, in our water. And these are not dangerous to us. These are actually what have upgraded our genetic system. So they are an important part of our evolution. But when our innate immune function gets destroyed, then these do become a problem to us. So we really need to work on restoring that innate immune function by getting that glyphosate out of the body so the gut microbiome can repair itself and those tight junctions can start to repair themselves, so that we can eliminate toxins out of our kidneys and start eliminating waste out of the body without that flowing into our blood and into important systems in the body. So just kind of recreating a relationship with the virome in general, and rebuilding that, we kind of start to realize how important the viruses are for upgrading our system, and realizing that these toxicities are kind of the main threat. And even with COVID-19, what we're seeing is the PM 2.5, which is a particulate in the air that is toxicity from cyanide poisoning, is actually what's attaching to the virus and coming into the body, and creating that hypoxia, that lack of oxygen to the cells, which is what really is being damaged in the body. So basically, some of the solutions that we can do is just support the microbiome, support healthy air, healthy soils, get these toxins out of our communities, and really start developing our innate immune function. Because when our innate immune function is developed, then we really have that protection, and we really can start being part of our environment and evolving with it. So that is what I wanted to cover, is just the importance of that innate immune function. And then I'll pass it off to Carrie TIdwel for some more solutions and diving into what we can do.
Thanks, Rita, and thanks, ladies, for sharing such valuable information. And I know once I learned this, it's completely transformed my life. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie TIdwel, and I have a huge passion for sharing this information, as it has transformed my life in such a positive way. So about 5 years ago, I used to get sick every winter, and thinking it was just normal to lose my voice with the season change, or normal to be more congested in the winter. I had no idea that I had the ability to shift things internally so that didn't happen. So a lot of times what we think might be normal is just common. So if somebody gets like common colds frequently, or gets congested all the time, these are all warning signs that our body gives us that's trying to self-clean. So like Mary Beth was talking about, when our body goes in, tries to have or has a cold, is trying to get rid of mucus and congestion. And so certain warning signs that you might not be aware of that is trying to tell your body to clean your internal terrain is like mucus in the eyes in the morning. So if you have like gunk in the corner of the eye, that's a sign that your lymphatic system might be a little congested and it's trying to like purge more out. If you get frequent colds or flus, this is another sign that we can come to want to clean our internal terrain. Snoring is another one, is a sign of congestion in the body. So if you snore or know someone who snores, it also is pointing to congestion in the lymphatic system. Anytime we have inflammation that's not getting better, I like to use the analogy with this is if you get kicked in the shin and you have inflammation there right away because you're have that injury, and if you get kicked in that same spot every day, that's just creating more inflammation in that part of your body. So same thing internally. So just as if you were to cut your finger, it heals. What makes inside our body any different? And I like to use that analogy of like, if you're getting kicked in the shin every day, it's not going to heal. So if we have these acids and toxins inside the body all the time, and we're consuming them, and we're not realizing what's causing this inflammation, then it's like we're getting kicked in the shin of whatever weaknesses that we've inherited from past generations. And so another saying I like to share is genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So just because your pre-genetically disposed to something, or your parents, you know, get colds and flus often, so you just assume that you do. It doesn't have to be that way. And it's about the terrain of the body and the internal terrain. And so I have zero fear of bacteria or viruses now than I used to, is because I know it's not the terrain of the body, or it's not the virus or the bacteria that's the problem, it's our terrain. And as well as what Rita was saying about the environment and how we want to clean up the soils and stop using harsh chemicals and all of that. So it can be overwhelming with all of this information, and it's helpful to just like start with yourself, like looking at your home, what toxic chemicals you're bringing in that you didn't even know of. When I first started learning about this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so many things wrong. I had lotion that had fragrance in it, so anything that has fragrance, I would just get rid of that and replace it with something that is scented with essential oils, something more natural. So looking at your home environment with like what type of cleaning products you use, and staying away from the harsher chemicals, going to more of the natural items. Like there's like laundry detergent that doesn't have fragrance in it. And so these things, all of these toxins in our environment, in our home, can accumulate and wreak havoc on our body. So it could just start with like looking at our home and having more fresh plants, especially in the winter. This can be really helpful to have the cleaner oxygen. There's some really amazing plants that we can keep indoors. And then when we're not in the winter, we can keep windows open to get that fresh air. And so once I learned about this regenerative healing, I've accumulated these different lifestyle tips and different things that I've added in that I want to share with you. So things to help with the immune system are breath work is one. So finding there's so many different breath work practices that you can look into that align with you. Getting out in nature, fresh air, and taking, you know, those deep breaths out there and really oxygenating the body is helpful. Getting out in the sun. And this one, a lot of people have fear about, is the sun, and it's not. And so I want to back to the body's warning signs. If you burn really easily, that's a sign of the body having too many acids inside. It's the body's more on the acidic acidic side of chemistry, and we want to bring in more alkalinity, and then we are able to go in the sun longer. So not that you want to burn ever in the sun, but if you burn really easily, it could be another warning sign your body's giving you to alkalize internally. So that's another little tip on that. Walking is great for moving the lymph system. So just like we have our two fluid-based systems, our blood is always continuously getting pumped through with our heart and lungs and breath. Our lymphatic system is stagnant unless we bring in chemistry to help move it. So I know these ladies mentioned fruit, and fruit is very cleansing and astringent and helpful to help keep things moving, but also walking, yoga, exercise that you like. Rebounding is a really good one that exercises like every cell in the body, and it's fun. So you can get a little trampoline or rebounder, and you can keep it in your house. It's a great exercise for kids too. And just if you've never done it before, or you're nervous about it, you can always just start out slow and work your way up. And that's a great one for exercising and moving the lymphatic system. Gratitude, staying in a sense of gratitude and our thoughts really help with the lymphatic system. And so just being observant of, are we repeating stories from the past, or are we worried about the future, can have a profound effect on our lymphatic system. Also, laughter, doing things that bring you joy, whether it's watching a funny comedy or calling a friend that makes you laugh, is really important, especially during times like this, to really connect and doing things that make you laugh. My son is that for me. He cracks me up all the time. So finding someone or something that can make you smile and bring you joy. Dry skin brushing is another good one to add in. And you could take a dry brush, and before you get in the shower or the bath, you just take it and you brush your skin. And our skin is our largest eliminative organ. And it's really helpful to open up this channel because we can release a lot of toxins this way as well. And then going into an Epsom salt bath or a sauna is a great thing to do after that. Sauna with like hot and cold therapy is really helpful. So you can sweat a lot of toxins out. You can also sweat in a hot Epsom salt bath as well. And that just really helps as you're on this journey to just help keep things flowing and keep things eliminating. Massage is a great one. And it's great to do different self-care. So whatever self-care, you know, resonates with you, but massage is great for circulation and reducing stress and helping move the lymph system as well. And really just taking this time to slow down and listen to your body. What is it trying to communicate with you? Is your body giving you signs and signals that you might need to do a cleanse or help assist if this mucus is coming out? Let's help get it out so that way it's not sitting in your cells and congesting and suppressing the functions of your body. So really tuning in and listening to what your body is speaking to you through its different signs and symptoms. Sleep is really important. So making sure that you have a regular sleep schedule and that you're getting good rest. I'll be sharing, dark tart cherries use is really good for producing natural melatonin, and I'll share more of this in a little bit. Avoid mucus forming foods and drinks is really helpful. And I know Carrie Drinkwine touched on this too, is some of the most mucus forming foods are foods that we're taught to eat growing up, which I'm shocked about. And I grew up with lots of ear infections and antibiotics, and I was told I should drink milk, and milk is good for our bones and it's good for calcium, and it actually did the opposite for me. So dairy is a good one to avoid for immune health because that just causes more congestion in the body. Too much processed meats and heavy meats eating, it can be really congesting and mucus forming to the body, as well as processed food and processed sugars. So adding in more alkaline forming foods like Mary Beth was sharing is really helpful. So diet is huge. And with the winter time, it can be hard to eat like cooling foods. So some tips to help with that are steaming apples and putting cinnamon on them, having more warming foods like that. Oftentimes I'll warm up frozen organic cherries and have that, and it's not so shocking when you're trying to warm up. Some herbs that I think are really helpful for immune health are elderberry is a really good one, and that's a really nice one for kids. And echinacea, astragalus is a great adaptogenic herb. Ginger is one of my favorites, especially in the winter because it's warming, so you can make ginger tea. I like to juice ginger and put lemon, and you can put honey or maple syrup, and that's a really nice warming, alkalizing drink. Lemon balm, reishi, and we'll be sharing these in the follow-up email too. So those are things that are really helpful to add into the body. And if you're feeling like overwhelmed with all this information, I just want to share, this is stuff that I've added in over time and that I've learned over time. And you can just keep adding in things that are going to help your body, you know, give it the best condition to heal itself. And so if you're wanting support in this area, like Mary Beth was sharing, we do offer a 30-day transformation that has this amazing kit that's put together. And just like Rita was sharing about regenerative agriculture and how those people healed from just having one meal from regenerative soil. And ideally, if we could all grow our own food, that's like number one. But being in colder climates, we really can't do that. And not everybody has access to land to grow their own food and use these regenerative practices. So we've connected with a company that does regenerative practices with the soil. And so they sprout and wind dry their superfoods and they're very nourishing to the body. So it comes with so I'll go over what the kit comes with. And so if this is something that you're wanting more support in, we have a closed group with live weekly Zoom calls and sharing more about how we can support you through this 30-day transformation. So we have the Power Shake, which is the superfoods grown in regenerative soil is one thing, and it's really easy. You just mix water, coconut water with it, shake it and drink it. And so it's like such a good fast food. It's great to travel with. My son loves it. My kids love it. And it's just really easy to add in this in your life just for getting those foods grown in regenerative soil, because a lot of our soil, like Rita was saying, is depleted. Then they have another product called Aminos, and this was created by an Italian doctor to help patients with muscle atrophy. And so these essential aminos go right into your muscle tissue without burdening the kidneys or the liver. So these are really helpful as we let go of those harsher proteins that are causing mucus in the body, to really allow the body the best condition to heal and regenerate on the cellular level. So aminos are really important, and it's great to have them in this form. The cherry juice, like I was talking about, is one of my favorites. That helps produce natural melatonin in the body. It's one of the highest levels of the natural occurring melatonin, and it's high in antioxidants, and it's great for opening up that eliminative channel with the kidneys. And so this is from cold pressed dark tart cherries, and this is great to take like an hour or two before bed, and this really helps you have a deep sleep, which is really helpful for healing. Another thing that comes with is the biomedic, which helps get rid of glyphosate, like Rita was talking about, in the body to help clean out the GI tract so we can absorb what we're eating. And glyphosate, what I learned and I was shocked about, is actually patented as an antibiotic, and it just really messes with the gut microbiome. And so getting this out of our bodies is really important in our healing journey. Along with Super Cleanse R, which has some gut healing herbs in it to help get rid of fungus and parasites. So if you're someone who craves sugar or breads and processed carbs like that, it's a sign too that we might have more candida or fungus overgrowth in the body, and the Super Cleanse R is really great to help get rid of that. And so we don't have those cravings, and we can really focus on the foods and diet and lifestyle that help support our body function optimally. So those are the cleanse kit that comes with it. And then you have our support of the weekly Zoom calls to help educate more and answer questions. And what really helped me transition and transform was to really educate myself on like what causes a cell to break down, why should I be eating and doing things in a certain way. And what we shared here more on the lymphatic system was really the missing link that I needed to help understand. It's the importance of opening up these eliminative channels and not bringing in congesting forming foods and chemicals. And so I like to use the analogy of like, we want to turn off the faucet while we mop up the floor. So stop bringing in the harsh chemicals, the congestion that we were conditioned to think was good for us, and then start bringing in more of these alkaline forming foods and help the cell function optimally and open up the eliminative channels and hydrate and alkalize, cleanse, and support the body in this way. So I just want to thank all of you for listening and taking care of yourself. I believe that if we take really good care of ourselves, it doesn't just help us, it really has this beautiful ripple effect on those around us, and I believe the planet. And so thank you for listening and joining in. I hope that you got a lot of valuable information. And if you're wanting more information on this cleanse, connect back with the person that invited you here, and they're happy to share more information and a discount code that we'll be offering. And we're starting this group. We have one, if you're wanting like a group guidance, we have one coming up January 1st and another one January 15th. But you can start this at any time. But if you're wanting to do it collectively with us, get back to the person who shared this, and we're happy to help share more information. So thank you, ladies, for hosting with me, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next one.
I wanted to pop on really fast and share one more thing. Angel just was so kind to say, like, what about disabled communities that can't move? And so my recommendations for moving lymph were as hot as you can in the shower to as cold as you can, like Carrie was saying. And then breath work is so powerful. So you can learn breath work anywhere. There's tons of videos online. I love following Wim Hof breath work, but breath actually emits 70% of toxic waste is actually emitted through the carbon dioxide. So just doing breath work, you'll notice your cells and your vibration rising, and when you bring in more oxygen to your cells, you bring in more alkalinity to your body. And then just getting outside in the air and breathing alkaline air, getting close to water if you live by water. But those are all great ways that you can do really natural cleansing.
Yeah, and we hope to help you shine. So our focus on our cleanse that Carrie mentioned was shine on, and that we're really focusing on cleaning from the inside and just being able to shine our light in the outside world. And if you, maybe the cleanse isn't in your budget, come chat with us and we'll find 1 or 2 things that will best serve you for really affordable to help you on your journey to start.
Yeah, and thank you everyone. I'm gonna just screen share that little acid alkaline chart one more time for you so you can, I see a bunch of people taking notes. So if you wanna just check that out real quick, and otherwise I really appreciate everyone being here today and investing in themselves, investing in their knowledge and empowerment of their own health. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will be getting the follow-up email out either this evening or tomorrow. So if you signed up, registered through our Zoom link, we will be have this chart and a synopsis of the information we shared today. So be on the lookout for that.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.